Friday, May 14th, and this is Chris Allison. I'd like to welcome you to the Genesis Ag Podcast. Today we're joined by Genesis Ag Vice President Josh Davis and Genesis Ag Product Specialist Mark Rothermich. In today's episode, we'll be discussing exactly what sets Genesis Ag biological products apart in the marketplace. So I'm going to turn things over to Josh and Mark and let them get started.
So Josh, we're here today and kind of wanted to spend a little bit of time talking about what makes Genesis Ag products different from some of the other things in the market, why we are going the direction we're going. But I think before we jump into that, I'd like to get maybe just a little more background from you in regards to the experiences you and your dad have had. How long have you guys been working with biologicals, and in particular base products that are in the Genesis Ag lineup today?
So that's a pretty broad question there, Mark. I can remember whenever I was a kid and my dad had this aerator that he would try to culture microbes based on what other people were telling him to do. And it was a lot of heartache, a lot of sweat and labor. You had to wait for the right temperature, wait for the right water temperature, right moon phase, a lot of variables to create these we'll say very limited species of microbes, if anything was actually cultured within those. And that was kind of how his first step into the biological world was. It was a lot of work and not a lot of ROI. And so me growing up, being around part of this and looking at what he was doing, it just kind of got to the point, okay, when is enough enough? And I remember a period there for about 10 years that we only did nutrients. And he kind of got burned out on the biological path. I guess he started back in the 80s and worked all the way through the early to mid 2000s, probably early 2000s, in trying biologicals, knowing that is part of the puzzle. And just kind of one day said, I'm done with this, too hard to work with, they make a mess, so on and so forth. So when he got a phone call in 2009, it said, hey, I've got a biological product, I want you to try it. He just kind of sloughed it off because he had basically tried a lot of what had been out there in the industry. So he said, send me 5 gallons of it, and we lacklusterly applied it. It was a split field application. We all know how much credibility we can put in a split field application. So it wasn't replicated or anything. And we took the other part of that container and put it on a separate farm in Virginia and tested the responses. We harvested our plot first. Now, again, this was a side by side, and it was close to a 20% increase in yield in year one. So again, as I mentioned, side-by-side test here on our farm, we just said, okay, it was a side-by-side. That side of the field did better than the other side of the field. Fortunately for us, where the other half of that container went was a replicated research plot that just had blank spots in it that my dad was able to get the product on. They were double crop soybeans, and they showed an 11% response in yield first year. So it got my dad real excited. It got us really excited because of the ROI we got on the farm. And that was kind of when the ball started rolling on where we are today, and the technologies that we're working with today is something actually worked. Now, we all know that in agriculture today that biologicals are the next big thing, or are the big thing right now. But there are hundreds, if not thousands, of different companies, and definitely thousands of different products that people try, and they get a bad taste in their mouth because of what the product actually is. Yes, you can culture a lot of different bacillus or different groups of microbes in a jug, but actually getting those to respond in an environment that they've not been present in years is where the challenge is at. I think that's part of what sets us apart in the industry, is the way that our products are made. We're, in a sense, Trojan horsing the biology. We're sending them in there to native biology on a particular field or particular farm saying, okay, hey, these guys are the good guys, and then they make everything flourish within a particular time. And I feel like a lot of products, if not all products out in the industry, except for our technology, doesn't have that protection or are put together that way. And that really is what gives us the benefit that we're seeing. Yes, people can see responses out of other technologies, but they're few and far between. And I think where people have used our technology and implemented some of our practices to help that technology work, we're batting an extremely high percentage of success where our technology is implemented.
So when we talk, Josh, about, getting things balanced in our soils, we've, as an industry, spent decades going down the road of trying to build levels in our soils. And we've had success doing that in a lot of instances. I mean, no question, our management has pushed everybody's yield levels significantly above what they were years ago. But what are some of the changes in mindset and approach that a client of ours needs to think about when they start working with the biology?
Well, it's doing the things to start promoting biology and build biology. And I guess the easiest way to look at that is, what can we do to limit biology? Multiple chemistry applications, whether it be herbicide, insecticide, or fungicide, heavy tillage, could be anhydrous ammonia, it could be applying all of your liquid fertility in one shot, really stunt the overall aspect of growth within a season. So looking at managing those, and if we do have to do certain ones of those, which they are needed in agriculture today, what are we doing to promote the biology to recover faster and get back on the path that we're wanting them to go on? I think is things farmers need to be conscious about today in getting biology going and keeping it going.
We've spent the last couple of years, as we've learned more as an industry, and also in particular within Genesis Ag, we're starting to talk with our clients about changing their habits and applications, and maybe the levels of some of the nutrients they're applying, because we're trying to get that biology jump started. And we're learning that the plant's interactions with the soils and with the microbes in particular are way beyond what we thought. These plants standing out here in the field, while we can't find a brain in them, they have the ability to communicate with the biology, don't they?
Yes. Each plant, when it secretes its sugar out of the root system, it's sending different signals to the biology to create a symbiotic relationship between the plant and the biology, to say, okay, I need this at this amount at this time. And basically it's just like filling up a gas tank. Everybody doesn't have a 30-gallon gas tank. Some have 15 gallons, some have 12 gallon. And it's all about what the plant's calling for. It's not about a particular percent on a tissue or sap sample or anything like that, because you look year to year and the plant's going to be different. You and I are different from year to year. So it's what the plant actually needs rather than what we're trying to force feed it. So that's where the biology comes in, is it could be the we'll call it the exchange person at this time, to take the nutrient that we apply and give it to the plant based on the plant's need.
So in essence, the way I'm starting to view the plant's capabilities is, if we have, and many of the nutrients, especially the ones that we've focused on for decades, we have an abundant supply of those in almost all of our soils today. And to me, it becomes a case that the plants, if they also have the biology, a broad enough spectrum of the biology there, our plants can almost self-regulate what they need, can't they?
Correct.
So what would you say, Josh, a person should expect as they start working with our biology? Is there a pattern to uh, responses or things that they should look at in your mind?
Well, I think the first thing to definitely look at is fertility efficiency. I don't think anybody on the Genesis Ag team is going to argue that it doesn't take 1.2 pounds of nitrogen to create a bushel. It's how that plant receives the 1.2 pounds to create a bushel. Where we've got our efficiency scales, if the guys that can get to that half pound to 75 hundredths of a pound of applied nitrogen to create a bushel, that's whenever, just let's say for the nitrogen fixing bacteria, that's whenever that form of biology can really start flourishing, because we're not choking it out. We're letting it actually do what it's designed to do. Be much like the phosphorus solubilizing bacteria with Morphos. We know that we've got overabundance of phosphorus tied up in our soil. So why do we need to apply more? Rather than applying more, let the Morphos utilize and create soluble phosphorus for our plants. So it's more of a short-term efficiency factor, a long-term biological flourishment to create healthier plants, higher yields, and that's where we're going to see the money in the long term.
Exactly. And I think that's what a lot of the customers that I work with are seeing, as they do some small area testing on, reducing their nitrogen rates if they're using Revita N and different things. They're having some eye-opening responses that, when they're reducing their nitrogen rates, they're not necessarily seeing, a hit in the yield maps. In fact, like you mentioned earlier, in cases we've had places where guys have actually seen yield increases. I think some of the exciting things for me is, while the yields are certainly important and the efficiency is important, some of the changes in soils that I've seen, even in first year applications where I've done some slake testing and different things like that, and just seeing the changes in the soil, in its structure and the biological activity in those areas, the earthworms, the arthropods and things like that. What have you seen from that side of it?
Oh, most definitely. I've got guys that are pulling 60-foot planters through a field with a tractor, and it's about maxing it out. This could have been 2 or 3 years ago, and they say, well, hey, I can pull it with less RPMs and I could pull it 0.3 of a mile an hour faster. They start seeing little things like that, or going through the combine at harvest. They've got fairly significant yields across the field, rather than really hot spots that may be 25% more, and then they've got a spot that's 25% less. The field starts becoming more consistent. The crop is more uniform. The yields are more uniform because the biology is working for you. Inevitably, conventional wisdom has caused us to reduce our biological function. That's why we've essentially got chemical dependent in agriculture, and we're having to spend so much money on a per acre basis. But if we could get our biology back in sync with us, and that's a period of time, it's not a 1-year fix. But if we could get the biology back in sync with what we're trying to do, we're actually going to spend less money to create the same or more yield. And I think that is what's exciting for a lot of farmers, but it's taking that initial step and saying, okay, I'll do 10 acres or 20 acres or 50 acres. And then you've seen it and I've seen it, Mark, that guy's mad at you because he only did 50 acres most of the time. And he's like, wow, I wouldn't have thought putting less fertility would have generated the same or higher yield than my high management plot.
Some of the exciting things for me as well, Josh, when we start seeing these changes in soil structure and earthworm activity, and one of the things I'm excited to do more of this season is water infiltration tests. I think we're going to start seeing a lot better response, drought stress, and just water infiltration benefits and soil health as we open these soils up.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've said it for years now, and people always tend to skip over this, but oxygen is the greatest limiting factor in agriculture. We've got all of it above ground that we could breathe. I mean, that's what you and I are breathing currently. But in our soils, we have a lot of anaerobic activity. There's not a balance there. And it's not something that tillage or strip till or anything like that can fix. It's getting really from season to season. Even crop rotation is a big thing in this as well, because we're promoting different forms of biology per the respective plant, and that is getting more oxygen in the soil. But the oxygen is the biggest thing, like you said, soil porosity, water infiltration, how deep are your roots penetrating whenever you do a root dig. All of that plays in factor with having oxygen in the soil.
Yeah, just like oxygen fuels a fire, it fuels a huge portion of the biology in the soil just the same way, doesn't it?
Yes.
So let's, Josh, step into, I think we've laid a pretty good foundation of where we've been and some of the things we're seeing. Let's talk a little bit more specifically about our product lineup. What do you feel like we do different in Genesis Ag? I know you talked a little bit earlier about, you kind of lightly brushed over how we structure our products, but tell us a little bit more. What do you think sets us apart in the market from a lot of the other players today?
Well, I think having diverse forms of microbes that are actually working. We can focus on nitrogen or focus on phosphorus or something like a seed inoculant or something like a seed treatment for corn. We can be focused on those with a specific reason. A lot of other competition in the industry is not as diverse as what we are, and they can go out and sometimes be successful, but can't stack up for what we're doing. We'll take Rosonate, for instance. We're here the middle of May, and guys are still treating a lot of soybean seed. People want an inoculant, but never really think about what an inoculant is outside of a Brady rhizobia strain. And yeah, you can get a couple bushel yield bump out of just a basic Brady rhizobia strain, but something like Rosonate that promotes both bacterial and fungal growth, from a nitrogen fixing Brady rhizobia to adding mycorrhizal fungi on the seed, which would be your fungal diversity, which would help with phosphorus uptake and other essential nutrients. That really separates us, because we're doing more than what we're saying we're doing. We're not just an inoculant with Rosonate versus the industry standard inoculant. And yeah, somebody can go out and slap it on the label, but they can't stack up to our successes, because we've got guys that are now planting 100 to 120,000 seed, getting a 90 to 95% viability out of seed germination, and doing better than what the guys that are planting 160 to 180,000 seed are, based on efficiency, utilization, and biology. So that would be one example there that would be significantly different.
So I think one of the things that I see unique with Genesis Ag is we do have a wide variety of products in our lineup, but they're all very diverse. As you mentioned with Rhizonate, we're not just one or two or even three strains of conventional rhizobia bacteria. bacteria. We go beyond that and, put a lot more things in each one of our products, don't we?
Yes. And that's another thing. We've got, 15 different products that we've got for sale on the website. Every product isn't for every farm. Really about 3 to 6 products are really all that could be a fit on the farm, because each scenario is different. Your farm's different than my farm, and whoever else, they're all different. So it's a learning tool. That's where, a Genesis Ag rep like you or myself could help someone identify what their products that they need to implement on their farm.
So maybe Josh, talk just a second on the fact, we've talked about, we put a lot of different things, a lot of different microbes and biology, trying to be broad spectrum with all of our products. Why then do we have so many different products in our lineup? Can you explain why we've got Revita N, as you mentioned, being our Cadillac product, but then we've got Rhizinate, we've got Zenergy, we've got Morphos. Talk a little bit about why, as a company, we've got so much of that type of variety.
Well, it's fitting each scenario. And what I'm saying is, from east to west coast, we're working with different scenarios, different soil types, different crops, and seeing different instances that a particular product like silicate is very beneficial in a sandier southeast soil. We can get a huge response out of that, dramatically increasing the level of silica in the plant. But we go to a Midwest soil, you've got high calcium, high pH. The silica is not for those guys in the Western Plains. It's very specific on where each product may go, just like deter being a natural pest deterrent. It has its fit and has its place from farm to farm. It's not really for every farm per se. So the things that could be universal would be the biological components and the food source, which would be carbose. Those would be the more universal components, along with the seed treatment, more so than implementing some other technologies that we have. Because you look at how dense a Midwest soil is with nutrients, it may not need nutrients per se. It just needs a biological flourishment or a food source like carbose, or a humic acid like Vitentera. It can be very specific to what each region may need as far as products.
And I think that's the thing that I've seen as well, working, across 4 states, as I do for the most part with my area that I cover, is every region has a little bit different capabilities, and the journey that each person takes is going to be a little bit different. Is that something that you see as well?
Yeah, I work with several hundred different people throughout the spring, putting programs together, and it's much like our biological technology. It's not for everybody to start out with. They may need to start out with a companion technology like a microboom foliar with their post application of herbicide, and see the response out of that. And then it kind of lays into, okay, what can I do, or how can I do more? Then that's the opportunity. But with the current fad being biological, most people are willing to take the step to do a short-term biological approach to looking at things. So a lot of the programs and things that I put out this year included the biology, but you still got certain guys that do the 624-6 or 10-30-40 in the row, and that largely limits biology. Now, you and I both understand the reason that they're doing it. If they're planting in cool, wet soils, But if conditions are optimal, that's actually limiting their yield because you're restricting the onset of mycorrhiza fungi on the root system.
Well, that's all the time we have for today. I'd like to thank Josh and Mark for taking the time to be with us and discuss a little bit more about Genesis Ag's biological program and some things that are going on with the company. Thanks for joining us for today's episode of the Genesis Ag Podcast. If you have questions or would like more information about Genesis Ag products, please visit us on the web at www.genesis.ag or contact us by email at info@genesis.ag. We hope you have a great week and look forward to seeing you very soon.